Good evening, everybody. Time for us to get started with our July membership meeting. How's everybody doing tonight? Good to see everybody. I'm certainly glad it's not 100 degrees like it was on Monday. That was pretty rough. But welcome to everybody. Welcome to all of you that are online, either on Facebook or YouTube. Nice to have you here as well. You guys know me well enough now. Let's get rolling through the agenda. And if you haven't been here before, we typically do a short business meeting. Then we do show and tell, which is sometimes a lot of us our favorite time. And then we do a break, and then we do a program. Which tonight, you get the you lucky guys. I'm doing the program tonight, so drew the short end of the stick. Couple of housekeeping things. Just a reminder. We're letting the intermission go a little bit longer because we want everyone to have time to catch up and talk and see all the show and tell items, get a snack. But then we're going to be flipping the lights and trying to give everybody a warning so we can kind of get going shortly after. But we're going to give, I think we've gone from more like an 8-minute or 6 or 8 minute break. We're doing like a 12-minute break. So just a reminder for everybody. Also, a reminder, if you do come up or you ask a question, we want you to use a mic and keep the mic up close to your. We've had a lot of people that end up going like this, and it becomes extremely hard to hear, especially if you're online. So just a reminder, and y'all are all big boys and girls, so that's all I need to say. Ron, we have an announcement about our new alarm system. You want to come on up and take the floor?
Okay. Got to move over. There you go. As of this morning, you know, you may or may not be aware, but since March, we've been having an alarm system installed, and we had some problems. It didn't work, then it worked, and then it didn't work. Anyway, as of this morning, that has gone live, and this doesn't affect everybody here, but if you have a key to the building now, if you're the first one here in the morning or during the day, if you're the first one through the door, you're going to have to disarm the system, and if you're the last guy out the door, you're going to have to arm the alarm system. It all appears to be working. We used it overnight last night. Everything seems to be working, so that's all there is to it. So the guys that have keys, the foreman, John, all your rough to ready guys, I don't know if they got the message or not, because I don't think I had their list, their names. You need to make sure those guys know that they have to arm and disarm. And I know that there's several Turner guys that have access, but just so you know, it's more of just kind of a point of information for everybody. There's a video on the website now on the members only section. I guess anybody can look at that. It's about a 5-minute video, and it just tells you how to arm and disarm and what you do when the alarm goes off because you pushed the buttons wrong. So, and that's basically all I got.
Thank you, Ron.
Where's it located? There's one in the office.
Okay. One in the office.
You come in and go behind the door in the office.
Behind the door in the office.
There's one behind, or there's one by the man door where you come in off the back parking lot.
And there's one off the man door, just so everybody could hear that, off the parking lot in the back.
And they're exactly the same.
All right, thank you, Ron. Nothing to report from David, nothing to report from John as our treasurer. I can tell you we still have money and we're able to pay our bills. You have a question, Ron? Thank you, Ron. I forgot to welcome any new visitors tonight. Do we have any visitors here? First-time visitors? Great, thank you. Welcome to have you. Welcome. Nice to have you tonight. I apologize. I usually open with that. And we have some new members. Awesome. And those of you that are visiting the first time, we'd love to have you as members. So consider joining or rejoining, and as the case may be. So thank you all for coming, and it's great to have you. And then everyone else, continue to spread the words. Continue to spread the word. People come to join. We'd love for people to come join us, get new members, get new blood, people to teach us, and develop more camaraderie, good community. It's a great community. That's why we're all here. So let's continue to try to be. I always tell people I'm a bit of an evangelist for the Woodworkers Guild. It seems like I have 20 conversations a week with people like, you should come check out the guild. I'm not sure that many people actually do it, but maybe somebody will. Craig Arnold, our member at large, has nothing to report. So you change your report. Come on up.
Pink? Yeah, there we go. Carol Shelton and I went to the Crossroad Coalition Association quarterly meeting, and we met Dewan Littlejohn. He is the patrol officer that he and 3 other officers walk a beat through the crossroads, in which we will be included up here. So if you see a policeman come strolling in and head to the restroom or maybe make a cup of coffee, don't be alarmed. He's just looking for donuts, okay? But they may be hanging out back here just filling out reports or making a couple of phone calls. But we did get to actually see the officer that leads the pack of officers that will be on foot patrol down here. They're also increasing the car surveillance in the community as well. So if you see some more police cars driving by every once in a while, that's the increase that they've promised us. So, and we had a great time too. We met a lot of new people. This actually took place at a design firm, contrary to what I told you where it was going to be. And the design firm did all kinds of stuff. They do point of purchase stuff for Walmart, I mean, everybody. They have tons of things on Amazon. It was just amazing that they're actually based in Wichita, and they have their online and eWorld presence here in Kansas City. Something's going on. Amber Alert, okay. So anyway, but if you see Dewan Littlejohn come through, don't be alarmed. He's not here for you. Might be here for me, but...
Thank you. I think that's a great partnership. Okay, moving on down the agenda. So Chuck Saunders, who's our Director of Assets, Chuck has some things for sale. There's a lathe for sale over there. What else have you got, Chuck? Plywood for sale. So go. There's some great deals over there. This is the place to get good deals. So go see Chuck and help us use all those excess funds that you have. Communications and website, Brian Rohrbaugh, do you have anything to report? No, nothing to report. So newsletter, great job again, team, on the newsletter. I know Ron has been leading that for several years, and he has a couple of people helping him. And we appreciate the newsletter coming out every month. We're always looking for help if you're interested. So if you're interested, see Ron. And if you have articles, we would love you to submit articles. We'd love to see some writing from other people besides the same old, me included. So Don Steele is our librarian. He's over here. He has magazines for sale, and they're 25 cents a piece or 5 for $1. And like I've said in the past, a lot of great stuff in those magazines. I know it's not really a magazine era anymore, but you could buy a few of those and you would get weeks of amazing reading. And the woodwork, let's face it, unless you're doing like CNC or laser, woodworking techniques are pretty much the same as they were whenever those magazines were written. Am I right? So, of course, the finishes might be safer for you to breathe now, but they also might not work as well. So I want to remind everyone we're on social media, so you can check us out on Twitter, which I don't know that gets used very much, on Instagram. So we have an Instagram page, and you can please tag the guild if you're showing your work on Instagram. We have a YouTube channel which has up to 451 subscribers. I know today we were at 450, and I was talking to someone, and he wanted to check it out, and he's like, "Well, now you have 451." So my evangelism at least got us that much. And also Facebook, we have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. There's also good interaction with the community, and people asking questions about different techniques. And what's the question we always get? Where do you buy wood? And someone's usually there to help you with that. Chris, do you have any announcements on events or AV? So, First Fridays. Is Catherine here to talk about First Fridays? She's in Europe. That sounds pretty cool. First Friday, I heard, was a great showing right after the holiday. So I really appreciate all the volunteers and the people who brought your work to sell. And you have an announcement, Jim? Oh, okay. Another new member. Awesome. Yeah, I just said, hey, join. Fantastic. Yeah, so member from 1999. How long were you a member? Okay, 4 years back in the 90s. I think most of us were alive in the 90s. Am I right? Yeah. Almost all of us. Megan is probably the exception. Going down the list, so membership, we're up to 762, probably 3 now. 770. And also wanted to recognize Carol is now associate assistant membership. So thank you for volunteering and helping. So appreciate that, Carol. So Matt is not here tonight. And Steve, you want to come talk about the safety and safety committee?
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Cal. I'd like to start out and talk a little bit about safety orientations. And I have some numbers for rough to ready. So as you are all aware, when somebody becomes a new member, then one of the things that they are there's 2 pathways for them to earn their green ID tag so they can be allowed to use open shop privileges. One is safety orientations. We do those once a month, usually on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, 3 to 5. And then rough to ready is another approach, and I'm not as familiar with that schedule, although both of those can be accessed by the website. So thus far, since I've been associated with it, in April, we ran through 8 new members, if I recall correctly. John Sloss did that. That was my first time to actually audit that. In May, we had 5 folks. June, we had another 8. And then this past Sunday, Ron Lomax and I worked through a group of 4 people, I think, altogether. So that's about 25 people since I've been associated with that, and we kind of just keep chugging along. I have some numbers for rough to ready from so this is hot off the press from Brian Rohrbaugh.
That does include safety orientation.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I've got kind of a breakdown from Brian, and I'll just go through that. In 2023, the Rough to Ready group actually had 106 students or enrollees that went through that course. And I'm assuming that all, if not the vast majority of those, are folks that are interested in getting the green card, right, John? That would be the case. And in 2024, year to date, 45 people have gone through Rough to Ready. So I'd like to say thank you to the Rough to Ready team. And it's, they just keep working along. They dedicate their time. And, as you can see, we're moving folks through that and trying to keep pace with new members as far as that goes. So, again, let's just give the Rough to Ready team a hand. Thank you for that, John and company. So, Okay, a couple other things. We are about to, close to finalizing safety rules for the panel saw, radial arm saw, and then the domino festool, or festool domino joining system. New safety videos that we're really now getting on track to create those. We've been able to make contact, Ron, thank you, and I was able to make contact with Bill Mantilla, who's kind of heading up the actual filming, editing, and production of the videos. We're going to do videos, new videos on table saws, handheld routers, and router tables. That may be one. And then the festool domino joining system. And then I think kind of last, and we're doing this to reflect the fact that we're in a new location, is to update general shop rules and have a video on that as well. Our next meeting, we had to move that back because of the holiday, will be this coming Wednesday, so we'll be working on assigning scripts to write for those videos. I would imagine that filming and production will start sometime after Labor Day. So that's it for me. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, next, obviously, Rough to Ready, and thank you again to the Rough to Ready team. There are lots of classes available, so check the website if you want to come through the program and get your green card. Sponsorship. So Dwayne has some lovely items. What do we have back there, Megan?
Okay, so the very special. Okay, so for the Bosch router raffle, we have 46 and 50 to begin drawing. So, just saying. And obviously, we have other raffle stuff. And tickets are still the same price as always.
We got, is this hot? Okay. The other thing we wanted to mention is that we do have people here from the music store, evidently. Twin Oaks Sawmill, Evan and Carolina. You want to stand up and your new sponsor?
Please introduce yourself. Come on up and tell us about your business, and they're new sponsors if you didn't hear that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Evan Johnson. This is Carolina. We own Twin Oaks Sawmill. We're a mobile sawmill business in Kansas City. We go anywhere within about 60 miles to your property. We can turn your logs into live edge slabs, dimensional lumber, mantles, beams, all the different kinds of things. We also kiln dry wood and do planing and slab flattening services. So if you're interested in sawmill services or anything like that, you can find us after the meeting. I can hand you a business card and talk to you about it. Thanks.
He also has a piece of wood there that is donated for the raffle tonight. So thank you, guys. It's awesome. Thanks for sponsoring the guild. And man, these Amber Alerts are driving me crazy. I hope they find her or I hope they find who is missing. Next, training is Rich. You want to come up and talk about the upcoming trainings and skill builders?
So I've got a couple of trainings that I want to announce to you all. First, we've got on August 17th, we have a class on scroll saw compound cutting. So if you're not familiar with how to do compound cutting on a scroll saw, or if you've never done compound cutting, this would be a great class. We've got still a couple slots open on that. And then I also want to mention that in September, we have, starting September 12th, we have our intermediate class. I know that a lot of people have been waiting for that intermediate class to come around again, and it is going to start on September 12th, and so is the hand tool class. The reason why I'm mentioning that to you now is both of those classes are going to get released for enrollment on July 23rd. So if you're interested in taking either the intermediate class or the hand tool class, be close to a computer right around 7 o'clock on July 23rd, and that's when the emails go drop for those. Also, We've got some exciting skill builders coming up. We've got stained glass with Terry Johnson. She is going to be talking about how you can add stained glass to your woodworking projects. That is on August 3rd. That is from 2 to 4. In September, John Johnson is going to be doing a session on wood stabilization. And then in October, Cal Hobbs is going to be doing a session on line and bury inlay. So those are the next 3 skill builders coming up, and so we've got a lot of good things going on.
Are there any prerequisites for any of those?
So the skill builders, if you don't know, if you haven't heard, are open, completely free, complete. You don't even have to be a member of the guild. You can invite family members, friends. The skill builders have no prerequisites whatsoever. The trainings, I'll turn it over to Rich.
The only training of the ones I just mentioned that has a prerequisite is the intermediate woodworking. In order to take intermediate, you have to have taken basic. So.
I don't understand that term that they used about this inlay you're talking about.
You'll have to come to the skill builder and find out. So just kidding. So line and bury inlay. You all know I'm a kind of a period furniture aficionado. Line and bury inlay was a system of inlay that was done mostly in like Pennsylvania, and then it moved into sort of the Shenandoah Valley into Tennessee. It was usually done by a little more off away from the cities, but it was kind of a folksy way to decorate your furniture, which was done with basically swinging pivots, swinging arcs, and inlay, and at the end you would have typically like three dots, 1 dot, a series of dots. So the line would be the arc, and the bury would be the dots. So it's just a simple system of inlay that can be done to some very, what I would call very beautiful and full of character type of decoration for your furniture. And I think is applicable to, you don't have to be doing a period reproduction to enjoy it. I think that it's just kind of cool to see how you can connect arcs and make different designs. So there's just kind of a system of tools, and it'll be fun to learn about it. So come on out. I could show you pictures at the break. How about that? Moving down, we're actually getting pretty close to the end here. The last thing on the agenda is to talk about the SIGs. The SIGs are our special interest groups that meet once a month. So our hand tool SIG is led by Rob Young and Wayne. I know Wayne's here. The next one is July 28th. Any special topics, Wayne? Haven't decided yet. I know that's kind of like me and this program tonight. Hadn't decided yet, was yesterday. The Wood Carvers group, it meets on July 23rd. And every fourth Tuesday of the month from 6 to 8. And Dan, do you have anything special that you want to talk about?
If you got something you want to work on, just bring it, and we'll help you in any way we can.
Yeah, so carving of any kind, wood carving, or obviously it's wood carving, or I guess you could go into other media too, but power carving, hand carving, traditional carving, folk carving. These are the guys that can set you up, whether if you're having difficulty with a technique or sharpening or anything like that. Come on out and see Dan and Jim Brock and have a good time. Laser Engraver SIG, next meeting is July 24th. That always meets at the fourth Wednesday of the month, and that's where you can also get trained on the laser. If you would like to use the laser, you have to have a special training. Anything special other than that to discuss, Curtis? I know Curtis. Same topic, okay. TBD. Scroll Saw SIG meets August 14th, and so the second Wednesday of the month at 7, which would have been last Wednesday. George, you have an announcement for that group?
Because of the lack of participation in the meetings, I'm canceling the rest of them for the year. I'm sorry to do that, but nobody's coming.
Well, that was a downer. I would say, if you want to do scroll sawing and you're passionate about the SIG and you want to come, talk to George. I bet he would love to have you if people would come do it. So that's the reason he's been giving his time. So let's not, if you're interested in scroll sawing, let's get it fired back up. CNC group meets on the third Wednesday of the month from 6:30 to 7:30. And that's led by Gary, Milky, and Ed. And the next meeting is August 19th. Any special topics you want to come up, Ed? Third Monday of the month that I said something wrong. Sorry about that. Yeah. Welcome to come if you're interested in the CNC. Our next meeting is August 21st. So now it's time for me to be quiet for a little while and let's do show and tell. So Kevin, come on up. Kevin's gonna lead our show and tell. If you've got a show and tell item, go on over and get in line, and can't wait to see you all's work.
Thank you, Cal. All right, Bill, do you want to start us off? And set your stuff down there. You want to go green? Green's on.
Okay, my name is Bill. I've been a guild member now for I don't know how many years, closing in on 5, 8, 7. But I do need a tag made, so tag folks, make me a tag and a card. I have a hand tool problem, so I always like to show you guys. I found this in an antique store in Asheville, North Carolina. I just was enamored with it. There was a lot of them on the shelf, but this one was in the best shape by far. When I started looking at it, cleaned it up a little bit. Made by Marples and Sons, Sheffield, England. When I did the research, it's an electrician's screwdriver from the 1920s. I thought by the shape of the handle it would have been a little older, but 1920s era. The ergonomics of it are what's fascinating. By show of hands, who has rehandled a tanged chisel? Don't do it.
Thank you, Louis.
From the bookstore here, Michael Dunbar wrote Restoration of Antique Hand Tools. I went to his page. Looked pretty easy, just a couple paragraphs. Followed the instructions verbatim. The challenge of this is the tang of the chisel, getting the right diameter hole going into the handle. The first one was an abject failure. It split because of the diameter wasn't right. It said to go half the diameter halfway up the tang. Did it, went to seat it, pow, split. So if anybody has any, and evidently nobody's done it, but if anybody's got any bright ideas, coach little Billy, catch me at the break. The ferrule was fun because I just keep old stuff from plumbing. It's just a hex nut threaded for the ferrule and a brass bearing I found at the hardware store. But turned out pretty good. With that done without the benefit of a lathe.
Now, did it talk about grain orientation for the handle?
Nope.
It's straight, but you know, it's got some wiggle in there.
Yeah, that might have been it. This at the antique store, stand by, in Columbus, vicinity Columbus, Indiana, on the last mission I was on, big antique mall. The tag said it's a bowl cutting adze, and I believe it's a steam bent oak handle. Blacksmith Forged, it's got its head stamp in there. I believe it's I and a K, or maybe an H and a K. It was in such excellent shape. I had hardly to do anything with it. The handle was rectangular with the edges chamfered. Odd, it just didn't feel right. So I edged those down a little bit, rounded them off, and did a little bit of honing on the tip. But it's just a fascinating little tool. Maybe one of these days I'll teach myself how to use it.
And what do you got wrapped up?
And finally, there is one member here, the photographer, knew exactly what this was. I had no idea. Wouldn't have even known where to begin to look to find out a clue. Any ideas? Anybody? Real close, real close. Nothing to do with leather, as it was explained to me. It was if you can imagine an ink stamped label on a crate, this would scrape the ink label off the crate so you could put a new label ink over it. So it's a ink label remover. Wouldn't have guessed it. Not in a million years. Anyway, thank you. If you can share any techniques on rehandling these tang chisels. I don't know, boys and girls. That's a little more work than I expected. Thank you.
And the leather work, real quick.
Oh,
Bill,
yeah.
just tell us a little bit about your guards there for your sharp edges.
Yeah, a fella puts so much work into honing an edge. I can't. If you've ever dropped a chisel after you've worked on it to get that edge, I really believe in scabbards, and I taught myself over the years to use the leather working tools with copper rivets. I've got the sewing awls, but I haven't taught myself to do that yet. But it goes pretty quick with just a leather punch, a simple tool to peen over the back of the rivet after you punch it through, and you can put yourself a scabbard together pretty quick. This one was a little more challenged to keep it curved. I kerfed the inside edge of both the top and the bottom, and then the centerpiece there I kerfed to get it to fold easily. I didn't have to soak the leather or anything. Then I put it, the ads in my vise, taped the edge so I wouldn't risk cutting myself, folded it over, and clamped it. And then once I had it in position, the outside edge was already stamped with a hole, so I could get the inside marked to stamp out the inside hole so it would hold the curve.
Very nice. Any questions?
Thanks, folks.
Very good. Hi, Bob. How are you? Good. Either one. Whichever one you want.
Bob Lanzettel. Some of you, I raise boys. The first 4 of the 10 grandkids are girls. So I've got a learning discovery here that I keep learning new things. The 11-year-old announced she wanted for her birthday nail polish, makeup, and hair barrettes. I'm going, okay, my sisters had hair barrettes. How can I make hair barrettes? So I started playing with it, trying to figure out. So I'm going to ask you guys later on to kind of give me some help because I'm still working on it. These are what's left out of the ones I gave her for her birthday. And I started off saying, okay, I want to cut a big enough slab, and I used scraps of some of the woods I had. So I've got everything from yellow heart, Paduke, purple heart, cherry I had laying around, cedar, all kinds of different woods. And so I'm just going to glue them together and try to make some patterns and stuff with it to include plywood. And plywood ended up creating some of the best patterns with that of all the things that I had. to include something like this. And I started off with the plywood saying, okay, how am I going to do this? Home Depot, Hobby Lobby had the metal clips, different types, but they're all curved. And it's like, okay, how am I going to cut a curve on my bandsaw with the slabs I'm kind of making with this and keep my fingers in doing this? So I started playing with it, and I made a table for my bandsaw table and cut, a slot through it big enough to hold a bolt, and then used a dado to cut it where it could cover the washer, and then built myself kind of an arm with drill holes, and I would take the slabs and hot glue it to that arm, and I could get an arc. Now, part of the problem with it is I can't quite get the arc necessarily as round as I would like for some of the bigger pieces, so I'm trying to figure out how to make a tighter curve. And ideally, I would take one, you've seen the leather ponytail holders that they put a pin to. Well, I got a piece of Purple Heart that would be great for the pin, but how to get a tight enough arc that would work with wood, because I figure I could drill the hole and make that piece, but how to get a tight enough arc's part of the problem with that. And I started off experimenting with just plywood glued together. I said, okay, let me play with the plywood before I go to my hardwood scraps and see how that works. And that ended up being some of the prettiest stuff that the granddaughter and the daughter-in-laws all fell enamored with. So I know I'm going to end up doing this again. With 6 granddaughters and the daughter-in-laws and all this, they said, you can do this and now earrings. So it's kind of like, okay, and I could take the scroll saw once I had the slabs and cut out different shapes. So I did smaller circles, ovals, different weird patterns, diamonds, triangles, and I got thinking, okay, I could even do butterflies and flags and different things, kind of playing with it, but how to get some of those arcs in there. And the other part that hit me again with the scroll saw cutting it out, when you go from the hardwoods like the Paduke to I hit the plywood, that different type of wood, hardwood to softwood, the blade kind of wants to do something different. Take off at a different speed or something else. So I need to pick your brains and say, okay, how can I help prevent that from happening? But the granddaughters was enamored with it. The daughter-in-laws were enamored with it. I can see I'm going to end up doing a lot more of these, so your help would be appreciated. And to keep, my mind just went blank. Who normally does the show and tell?
Jim Bainey.
Jim Bainey. I tried Odie's oil. As expensive experiment as that is, I like it. The only thing that it did not work well with, it seems, was the plywood, because that's part of the problem I'm finding with the plywood doing this. While the color patterns are kind of neat to play with, it's a much softer and seems to crumble and break easier. So I ended up going with to try and make that a little firmer and give it a little more firmness.
Have you thought about steam bending, or is it something that would make it a little bit easier to bend those pieces?
I don't know, with the different combinations of wood, like this one's got,
It might melt the glue.
yeah, that's cedar, the stripes are plywood, Purple Heart, and that's cherry. I don't know how easily that would bend. I hadn't never tried bending. It'd be something else to play with and try to learn.
All right, very good. Any questions?
I know who to
Beautiful.
talk to.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Bob. All right. Here we have some benches and steps. Alexander, how you doing?
I'm just fantastic. So Dave and Richard were nice enough to invite me to come and help instruct the hand tool class this last semester. So I kind of called it my master's program, because I built one along with them just to get more practice. Did a couple of different techniques that we didn't do in the class, and this is what I came up with. Still a lot of the same stuff, the through mortise and tenons. Instead, I used a stop dado here, put a little bit more curvature on the legs. This time around, last time all the wood was completely ready for us to use, so this was rough sawn lumber that I broke down with hand saws and planed out, and so that was an experience. The one thing on this leg, as I was planing this flat, my plane hit a piece of metal. And so I dug that out, and then I kept planing, and it hit another one and another one. So that leg, I think, ended up getting sanded compared to scraped at the end, because there's actually a bird shot in that tree, and it was lead, so they did not detect that at the mill. So, but I left it all in. I left all of them I could after those 3, just because I thought it was kind of a cool story. Lost Art finishes the mineral spirits, linseed oil, and spar, and then burnished beeswax on top of that. And then for our latest class, we taught it in a day this last Saturday. I just decided to make it harder on myself, and it took me a week instead of a day because, again, I cut all of this using just a handsaw. I did the through mortise and tenon, whereas in the class we used a dovetail. It's probably cleaner, the one we make in class, but again, I just need to make it harder on myself. We use, on the batten here, I did a mortise and tenon to hold that up. Bexford uses pegs, but I apparently think I know better than him, so I don't know, it's probably gonna crack or something, we'll see. And then I saw a lot of people on the internet that tried this design and their legs hung over because of this curve, so I spoke shaved that even. The only thing I did not hand cut on that is the front curve here, because I hated the coping saw so much after I got done over here. So, and then that was first time using my own milk paint. I don't know, the dog and cat loved having milk and vinegar just sitting in a bucket in the basement. Put in pigment, I think it was like clay from Italy or something. Then dark tung oil, and then tung oil over that. So, okay.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you.
How long did it take you?
Just leave them up here.
Question is, how long did it take you?
The bench, yeah, about 7 weeks, but that's just because I was building it along with the class. I would build something, especially if I was instructing something that day, that week, then I would definitely wait to do that before the class so I could have some time to practice. This, maybe 10 hours, 12 hours, so. And the class takes about 8, so yeah, next time we have it, come on out. Sign up for the wait list for the hand tool class. We will use you probably, so all right.
Very good. John, I know you've been hanging around to do this, so come on up.
Animal clothes hangers for little kids I made up. I don't know if you got a... Yeah. Okay. I have six different animals here. There's another couple I don't have here, a mouse and a monkey. I just don't have those here. Yeah, they're pretty simple on the laser. The hard part was getting the paper pattern scanned and then, fiddling with the file until something that wasn't a complete mess resulted. just, that's about it. Pretty simple.
Will you leave them raw wood like this, or will you paint them?
I'll paint up a few examples. I'm planning on selling them at First Fridays. I'm planning on painting up 3 or 4 of them so people see what they look like finished. But I'm hoping they'll be more of a DIY project for a crafting project for the kids, because I don't paint very well and I don't enjoy it, so.
Very nice. And how long did it take you to get these all cut?
Cut very, very fast. Maybe 30 seconds each one to get them engraved and cut. Like I said, the hard part was the hours I spent, fiddling, on the computer trying to get the node editing right to, removing a lot of artifacts and stuff that came from the scan.
Very good. Any questions?
Could you have just drawn it with a marker to full size and then?
Repeat the question, please.
Let me give you a mic.
Could you have just used a magic marker and trace a design and then use Photoshop or Corel to pick up that black and white and turn it into a light burn file?
I think that would have actually been, I'm not sure if that would have saved any time, because I'd still have to clean up, from having it scanned. The original pattern had actually 10 designs, but 2 of them I just even scanning it. So like you said, I'm probably going to have to, take them out, trace them, with a nice clear line, and then scan those drawings. But I think, even the time I spent, fiddling with it, it wasn't, that much worse than, what I would have done drawing. Plus my hand shakes when I'm drawing, so. Anything else?
Very good. Nice job. Who do we have here? Harry, tell us about this.
All right. This took me about 5 months working on it off and on. It starts off pretty slow, but it's made of Tupelo. I paint it with acrylic. The parts that are actually carved are the bird, the mouse, the blackberry, and the mushrooms. I actually just found the piece of wood on a stroll with my dog, so I was very fortunate because it was what I was looking for. I didn't design it around that piece of wood. I just had already had this plan in my mind, and I just lucked out.
Very nice. Very nice. Did you do the wings separate and set them into the main carcass, or did you?
Yeah, the wings are separate. The tail is separate. And actually, the very end of the feet are separate. So you couldn't get a large enough piece of Tupelo to be able to carve it all out of one piece.
So, Dan, could you do this with a chainsaw and a radial arm and get it? Not quite.
Yeah, not quite.
Very, very good. And the mushrooms are edible, right?
They'd be a little hard on your teeth.
Very good. Any questions?
Yeah.
How long did that bird take? How long did that bird
It took me 5 months working on this Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So, I don't know how many of you use sleds in your woodworking. I don't know how many of you use sleds in your woodworking, but it never fails that when I need to put a stop block on, it's usually out here somewhere that I need to stick it. So yesterday, I was here in the shop and I thought, I'm just going to make me an extension fence that will clamp on. And I use the match fit dovetail clamps, so that way I don't have any clamp on the front side. I can clamp this on, and now I can adjust my stop block because they are also on the little dovetailed little green things you see on the back here. They're dovetailed. And now I can adjust my whatever length I need way out here. I can clamp this down this way if I need to get even more length on there. Because I was just like, son of a gun, I got it. And then, of course, it was at the point where I couldn't use the table saw fence because what I needed was right there. So the fence wouldn't have been long enough. So I thought, well, I'll just do this. So I can just slide this anywhere I need to. And if I make a cut in it, I've got zero clearance then. So I have an exact spot to where to set up for my cuts then. So I can make my clean cut and then slide it down to the stop and make my final cut. So it worked really well for the 4 pieces of wood I had to cut yesterday. But at least now I have it.
Pattern from a book,
No,
a magazine, or you
I
just
just
thought
made it up. Just thought it up. In fact, I put a through groove right in the center. I was going to use one of my knobs and just a little bolt on the back. And I thought, oh, dang it, I don't have any knobs. And then I thought, oh, I got these dovetail clamps. Let me use those. I got a whole bag full of those, so I used that. So it came out pretty good. But I like it because there's no clamps that reach over in your work area. So I use
your stop block. It is not square
well,
to the fence.
I would make it square when I bring it in wherever I need it. I can make it square.
But the point I'm making is it's so you can do 45s if you need to.
No, that notch right there is for sawdust relief.
Now, come on, I'm trying to help you out here, trying to make it more exciting.
No. It's not for
Good job.
45s.
Good
Well,
job.
thanks. So,
Questions?
yeah, I hated to follow the owl. So, my wife is probably watching at home. She's, can you make that owl? And the answer is no, I cannot make that owl. So.
But if you wanted to, you could see Dan.
Yeah.
And Dan would help you make that
Yeah.
out.
Right.
Very good. Any other questions?
I'll have this sitting over there if you guys want to take a look at it. So, if you haven't bought any of these dovetailed clamps, I mean, I use them for auxiliary fences on the router table. I use them on the table saw. They just, because they're not in the way, they don't get in the way of anything. So the hardest thing, though, was trying to make the vertical cuts right here, because that was done with a miter gauge on there, and one of them, it slipped and got a little wide on me here. But, you know, a little sandpaper on the miter gauge kept it from sliding in. So.
Very good. That wraps it up for show and tell.
Well, thanks everybody for those projects. Those are great work. Man, the owl is amazing, but I love all the projects. So thank you all for bringing it in. We would love you all to bring your projects in. I think that many of us probably would say our favorite time is watching the show and tell. It's just amazing the talent we have here and what people are working on. And it doesn't have to be the world's largest masterpiece. It can be just what you're working on. It's kind of neat to see all different things. You have something to say, Dwayne?
If we sell 4 tickets, don't sell.
All right, yeah, so four more tickets and we can draw for the Bosch router table. And that would be a great prize for someone. We're going to take a break. It's 7:55. We're going to take a 15-minute break. We're going to come back at 8:10. So grab a snack, grab a conversation, and you don't want to miss. I'm going to talk not for too terribly long, but I'm going to speak on just the fundamental basics of how to build a chest of drawers. So that's the topic for tonight.
Our presentation today will introduce you to the requirements for the safe use of our Holtz-Hair 1265 Supercut panel saw. Hi, my name is Mike Jones and welcome to another edition of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's ongoing series of machine safety videos. Now normally, our videos only cover the safety concerns of our machines. However, we're taking this opportunity to introduce you to how to use the Holtz-Hair Supercut panel saw. This saw is relatively easy and safe to use, but there are specific steps you need to master to use this saw. Remember, if you need assistance or guidance on the use of this machine or any other machine in the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild shop, you should seek out one of the on-duty foremen for assistance. To get started, first make sure the area around the saw is clear of any obstructions or obstacles that might interfere with your work. To the left and rear of the saw, you will find the power switch, which is a red rotary knob, and a compressed air supply valve, also with a red handle. Turn the power switch on and turn the air on. The air is on when you have the handle of the air valve running parallel to the supply line. If either of these steps are left out, that machine will not start. The Holtz-Hair Supercut panel saw is capable of cross-cutting or ripping stock up to 72 inches wide by 12 feet long. This saw is made for handling large 4x8 sheets of plywood. This panel saw eliminates the need to wrestle with a 4x8 sheet of plywood on our cross-cut or rip table saws, and the accuracy is every bit as great. To start, determine what is the best way to optimize your rip or cross-cut of your sheet goods. If you intend to rip the 8-foot length of your sheet stock, it's best to lay the sheet on its long side on the base track. You also have the ability to rip your stock on the mid-rail supports if you want to rip or cross-cut narrower stock. To cross-cut stock vertically, you can do so with stock up to 72 inches in size. First, ensure that the orange saw head is oriented for vertical cutting. The blade guard, which is the white portion of the saw assembly, will be vertical. You'll need to set the indexing bar into the stop that is marked at the top of the machine. This positions the saw to cut your vertical cut. Next, set the depth of your cut according to the thickness of your sheet stock. The scale on the side of the adjusting bar has a white scale that allows you to easily set that depth of cut. This also prevents the saw from cutting into the backing rack. Next, set the stop block to the width you intend to cut. Again, there is an easily accessible scale to set the width of your cut and position your stop block. By pulling down on the stop block at the appropriate width, this will lock your stop at your desired width. Pull your sheet stock to the left and set it against this stop block. Next, you will set the cut depth pressure wheel, which also has a scale showing the material thickness that you are cutting. This is adjusted by using the clamp lever at the end of the cut depth pressure wheel. By setting this correctly, this prevents you from cutting too deep and into the backing rack. The two black handles attached to the saw head should be disengaged by pulling out and pushing the saw head to the top of your stock in a position to start your cut. At this point, the white spring-loaded blade guard should only overlap the top of your stock by roughly 1 inch. Turn the saw on. That's the green button on the right. You engage the saw carriage by using the 2 black carriage handles and push in and pull down once you have the pressure wheel touching the face of your stock. Now pull down on the black handles, moving the carriage all the way down to complete your cut. When the cut is complete, release the pressure on the black handle so that the saw blade retracts away from the material and then turn the saw off. Return the saw head to your start position at the top of the sheet. Wait for the saw blade to stop rotating and then remove your cut-off material. If you have multiple cuts to make at that first dimension, move your stock to the previously set stop and repeat the steps that we just went through. If you have material you want to rip, place your sheet stock on the base track or fold down the mid-backing supports to raise your material to a more comfortable height. When ripping stock on the Holtz Hair Supercut panel saw, the rip cut goes from left to right. So you need to set your stop to the right side of your material. This will ensure that the material is held in place while you perform your rip cut. To orient the saw head for rip cutting, you will need to rotate the saw head. This is done by rotating the saw head counterclockwise to the horizontal position. Secure the locking lever back into that locked position by rotating it to the right. This is the lever with the black knob located under the saw. At this point, you'll need to make sure that the indexing bar is disengaged by lifting the bar on the right side of the saw head. At that top rail, you see the arrows indicating the détentes for that indexing bar. That bar will only lock down at those locations marked by an arrow. This indexing bar has to be released to do a horizontal rip cut. You will need to position the saw head at the proper point to make your rip cut. Again, using the vertical orange scale on the machine to set the width of your rip cut. Make sure that the 3-inch locking knob is turned to the right to lock the saw in place. This also engages the pneumatically controlled backing rack, and it will position itself so that the saw blade does not cut into the backing rack. What that does is that puts the blade in between the back rails and locks the saw in vertically. Turn the saw on with the green button on the right. Using the 2 black handles on the saw carriage, push in and engage the blade into your stock and push the assembly to the right. As you make your cut, be aware when you have cut approximately halfway into your total length of cut, insert a shim or a wedge in the already completed kerf. This helps support your material so that you can complete your rip cut and not pinch the blade and possibly damage your stock. Disengage the saw carriage and turn off the power with the red button. Return the saw carriage to the start position at the left side of the sheet. When the saw blade has stopped rotating, remove your cutoff piece. This is Mike Jones for the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. Thank you for watching.
Your safety and the safety of our membership when using any of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's hand or power tools is the #1 concern of your safety committee and the board of directors of our guild. Hi, my name is Christine Kessler and welcome to another of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild's ongoing series of machine safety videos. Our discussion today will cover your introduction to the safety rules and requirements of the Guild's various drill presses and how to safely operate these machines. Keep in mind that this video only covers the safety concerns of these machines and is not a complete training program for the use of the drill press. The drill press is used to drill holes precisely and with repeatable accuracy. It has a motor-driven head with a chuck that accepts bits or cutters. It also has an adjustable table where you mount your work. You operate it by pulling a rotary lever that lowers the drill bit into your material. When in the shop, please direct any questions about using the drill press or any other guild equipment to the on-duty shop foreman. He or she is there to act as your main resource to keep you safe, provide advice, and assist you to successfully complete your project. And please remember, while in the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild shop, you must wear OSHA-approved safety glasses with side shields at all times. Your regular glasses are not approved for use in any shop activity while you are at the Guild. It is doubtful that the noise level created by operating a drill press would necessitate hearing protection, but if you feel more comfortable wearing earplugs or ear muffs, by all means, do so. However, there is one caution on hearing protection. Guild rules stipulate that any hearing protection worn by members must not have the ability to receive any type of broadcast media. Failure to follow this requirement may result in losing your shop privileges. Before starting, make sure the size of the bit is within the capacity of the drill press. Do not exceed the recommended drilling speed. Use the charts posted near the drill press to determine the recommended speed setting for the type and size of drill bit you are using and the material you are drilling into. Speeds are set by changing the belt location on the pulleys in the top of the drill press or by dialing in the required speed setting on our digital direct drive drill presses. Always unplug a drill press before manually adjusting components. See the on-duty foreman if you need help making those adjustments. When installing the drill bit, please make sure that the bit is in the center of and inserted all the way into the chuck. Use the chuck key to firmly tighten the chuck so the fingers of the chuck are tight enough on the bit to prevent it from slipping. The chuck key is stored on the side of the drill press that it belongs to. It is worth noting that each drill press may use a different size chuck, so you should not move them from one drill press to another. Be sure to remove the key from the chuck and return it to its storage location after adjusting the chuck and before you start the drill press. A chuck key will become a projectile if left in the chuck and can cause an injury to you or someone else. When drilling through holes, support the underside of your stock with a backer board secured to the drill press table. This will prevent damage to the metal table and will also help to prevent tear out as the drill bit exits the bottom of your project stock piece. You must always use a clamp or vise to securely fasten the stock to the drill press table. Never hold stock in your hand while drilling. You would be the responsible party if the drill press spins the stock out of your grip, launches it across the shop, and possibly harming you or someone else. When drilling into a cylindrical stock, hold the workpiece in a V-block clamped to the table. It is important that you are not wearing any jewelry or loose clothing. If you have long hair, tie it back so there is no possibility of it contacting any moving part of the machine. Remember that the 3-inch rule applies. Keep your fingers away at least 3 inches on all sides of the drill bit. When drilling into a long workpiece, take extra caution to position the excess stock to your left, so if the stock rotates, it will hit the fence or the post, not you. Feed the bit smoothly into the work. If the hole being drilled is deep, withdraw the bit frequently to remove waste from the hole and shavings from the bit. This will help to dissipate the heat generated by normal drill press operation. Drilling can and does create massive amounts of waste on the drill press table and the floor around the drill press. Be aware of this and frequently clean up your work area. If the drill bit binds, turn off the drill press and carefully turn the chuck backwards by hand to free the drill bit. Never reach around and under a rotating drill bit. Don't try to stop the rotation of the drill chuck, spindle, or stock rotating on a bit with your hands or fingers. When adjusting the chuck, stock, or before leaving the drill press for any reason, the power must be shut off and the machine must have come to a complete stop. When finished, turn off the drill press and wait for the bit to come to a complete stop. Remove the bit and return it to its proper place. If a dust collector is attached, turn it off and take a moment to clean up the drill press and the floor around where you have been working. Remember, it is your responsibility to clean up after yourself. This is a safety issue as well as a courtesy. And feel free to help other members clean up too. It's a great way to make friends at the Guild. And please remember, as a Kansas City Woodworkers Guild member, you are required to know and observe the Guild's safety rules outlined in the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild Safety Rules booklet. If you fail to follow these rules, you may lose shop privileges and will be held responsible for any injuries or broken Guild property that result from your neglect. For the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild, this is Christine Kessler. Always work safe, and thanks for watching.
Can you all hear me? Good deal. So, like I said, last week we were discussing the presentation we had for tonight, and Matt had done a good job of setting up with a woodworker who was going to do us a Zoom presentation. And really, the more Chris was working with him, the more it seemed like it was a little bit of a bait and switch. He wanted it to go through his website, and so we were like, "Hey, let's maybe change gears. And does anyone want to do a presentation?" So I guess I was the last one to put my hand down. So, but I haven't done a talk in a little while. So I thought something that pretty fundamental piece of furniture that not a lot of people build, because they have a lot of components, and I think typically most woodworkers don't get to building chests or drawers because it's just a lot of steps. And what I want to tell people, man, every time I get up here, the Amber Alert goes off. I thought maybe I could talk a little bit about just the fundamentals of building a chest of drawers, and what I always try to do is break things down into little steps. You know, woodworking essentially is, drawing a line and cutting to a line, am I right? And you can do almost anything by breaking it down into the steps. Now, a project might have 5 steps, a project might have 250 steps. And usually if you have someone that can walk you through the steps, most people can do just about anything. And do you have the PowerPoint up, Chris? If you look at the chest on that, I'm not sure, I think I might have brought that into the guild at one time, but is that from Fine Woodworking? No. That one never has been published, except for right here. But I made that chest of drawers for my daughter for her graduation from college. And she graduated 2.5 years ago, and I got her the chest about 1.5 years ago. So I didn't quite make my deadline. If you look at the small chest here, they actually taught this as a woodworking class, a guild class, and making a bedside chest. So I think there were maybe some people in here that had taken the class. Maybe they're not here, but one of the reasons we made it small is because a large chest of drawers adds so many different challenges because it's heavy. You move it, and especially if you teach a class where you have to come in once a week, which I'm not able to do consecutive days, at least not at this point in my career. Maybe give me a few years, maybe I can get to the point where I can do that. But a chest of drawers adds another level of difficulty because it starts to get heavy. There's a lot of wood to process, and there's just a lot of pieces and parts. All those little pieces, everyone can process enough. Everyone can do the activity, but just bigger. So a smaller piece to me was very accessible. So how many of you all have made a chest of drawers? I know there's a handful of people who have done it. How many of you have made a box? So a lot more, right? So chest of drawers, what is it? A box, right? So everyone has started. Yeah, you all have all the fundamentals down. So every piece has a start of the case. And the case, typically, you all know I'm a traditional woodworker. Traditionally, many times these were done by hand-cut dovetails. Or you could do a machine-cut dovetail. So here you can see, I think you can see on the bottom of the case, the dovetails. Can you still see those? Nope, they're covered up. See, they're one of the great things about a case piece dovetails. Almost all the dovetails are covered up. If you look at the top, it's joined by those two pieces, and those are dovetailed. And I can just tell you the bottom is dovetailed to the sides. One of the great things about a dovetailed case is the whole piece is all grain moving, because when you get a case, you can do lots of small boxes and you don't have to worry that much about grain and wood movement. When you start to get wide boards, and I would say this is getting probably 18 inches wide, 16 inches wide, you start to have to really worry about your wood movement. And if you get into a big piece, I know years ago I made a large Charleston double chest. If you look on the very last page of my PowerPoint, Chris, I'll show you a picture of a Charleston double chest that I made. And if you see, I was a little young, I had a little more hair there. But
it's a little darker too.
Yeah, no kidding. But that piece is, this big, and I think the bottom is 25 inches deep. So it's just a massive piece. So the bigger your pieces of wood, you all know, small piece is not going to move as big as a big piece. It's just the mathematics. So you always have to think about wood movement in a chest, and that's one thing. Another nice way to make these chests for the side would be a frame and panel. Just like you could do 2 legs, 2 rails, and a panel, and that really does help with the wood movement, because the whole frame and panel is designed to help with wood movement. It does add some different complications in how you build the structure inside. You could make these sides out of plywood. That would be much more getting more into a cabinet type of application. I will say the first chest of drawers I ever made was, I had moved to Kansas City, and my wife moved to Kansas City right after we got married, and 13 months later we had a daughter, and then like a year later my wife kept saying, we need a chest of drawers for her, and I kept saying, well, I can make it. Well, I didn't have a shop. I had a few hand tools. I grew up built woodworking, but I kept saying, well, I'll make it, and she finally got tired of me saying that and said, let's go to Nebraska Furniture Mart and get one, because I'm tired of waiting. And we went and walked around NFM, and everything I saw, I was like, I do not want to buy that. So, because I thought I could make something at least, maybe, there's beautiful, pretty furniture there. I don't want to denigrate the furniture, but I was like, man, I think I would like to make it. So that pushed me into getting back into woodworking. So that was really my first piece, and I bought a bandsaw. That's what I got out of it. I made the case out of plywood, and I glued up the poplar, and I hand planed everything, the wide top, and but that chest is still in my basement. It's still doing pretty well. I even dovetailed all the drawers, and I did rabbet the back. I did nail and rabbet the backs, but. So that's what got me back into woodworking, but you can do that, you can take that approach, because I didn't have much of a shop then, and so made the case out of plywood and face framed everything, just like you would do a set of kitchen cabinets. So you've got your box. Any questions about that? I want everyone to ask questions as much as you can, make this interactive.
If you do have questions, please raise your hand and we'll get microphones.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing you have, so one of the things that makes it a chest of drawers is that your box is actually is a holder for a bunch of other boxes. So you have all the different drawers, and everyone has chests of drawers at your house. So you have to figure out your configuration, and you have to install what's called drawer blades, which are these, and then drawer runners. So these, I would typically build them by doing dovetails and install them from the front. In fact, you can see how these are These are not done that way, are they? I've done them before where you have dovetails. The piece that was the cherry piece, this one was actually done with, I think it's done with dados. That joint is terrible, isn't it? Look at those. I need to do some, what's that? That's what they make wedges for. This piece is 2 years and it's been sitting in my shop for off and on, moved to my basement, come back up, and I glued this top over here 2 years ago, and this weekend I worked on molding the edges, and everything was great. I packed it in my truck this morning. I came in at the guild and the glue joint has split. So sitting in my truck all day, overheated it and split the joint after over 2 years. So the wood movement, the unfinished and sitting in your truck all day is not a good method for stability.
How would you fix that? Would you rip it and then glue it back together?
No, I'm just going to squeeze glue in it and clamp it with I-beam clamps. See
Okay.
if it holds.
Sounds good. I had
It
no
held-
idea.
it-
I know, I was serious. I didn't know if that would break the bend or.
No, I think that it will hold. So I'll take, I usually use yellow carpenter's glue. That's just kind of what I grew up on. I don't use Type Bond 3 because even though people will say that carpenter's glue is not water soluble, it actually is. You know, you have to work on it and heat it and work it and heat it. It's not like high glue. But because I can take a little bit of yellow glue and put it on top of the crack, drip some water in it and work it through and get it all the way through. And then because I use those I-beam clamps, which you can put a lot of pressure on them, it'll close up. The question is, and I'm sure it will stay, but if it doesn't stay, then I would have to do something like ripping it. And that would be an option, but I don't like to go backwards. So the next thing you do is these drawer blades. So I'm sure that I installed these with a stopped dado. That's how I did this one. That was one method. Another method would be a sliding dovetail, sliding it in from the front. And that's how I did that chest that was on the first one that I showed. The top one, of course, was dovetailed from the top, which is also, sometimes you might have a full top. Sometimes you might have your top itself is the top, and that might be installed with a sliding dovetail, like all the way from the front, which is a pretty difficult joint. So I typically don't do that because it's a lot of handwork trying to fit that. These drawer runners here, there's many elaborate ways to do this, but what do you all see that you might have a challenge with these drawer runners? Wood movement on the side? Yes, I'll repeat, wood movement on the side. So if you have these drawer runners and you have a wide board and then you have a board this way, this is going to want to expand and contract, and this is not going to do that because the grain orientation is the other way. And so you don't really want your case piece to have a crack in the side. And so you have to think about that. Now, I didn't grow up really overly wood movement conscious. I think it was a very workmanlike approach. So my approach is also, and this is how I was taught by my dad, glue the first couple inches and then just brad nail the other. That's probably enough. Those brads are going to move. And that's how those are installed. They are set into dados, so you know that if it was just like that, it might bend over time. So setting them in dados give them a lot more strength. This is not like a super elaborate way to deal with it. I'm sure that you could take extra steps and do a mortise and tenon into the blade. You could do a mortise and tenon and then run another blade on the back, essentially making frames. That's another way to do it, and that would be a much more sophisticated way to deal with the wood movement. And then if you did that, you could also not glue it in the back, so it would have freedom to move. Kevin, do you have a question?
Yeah, what's your typical choice for your runner?
As far as wood?
Yeah, as far as wood, what's your choice?
So the question was, what was the choice for runner?
Yeah, typically I would, this one I had some yellow pine that I used. Poplar would be okay. I think that if you wanted to make an argument for like long-term, 300 years worth of use, you would probably go with something harder like maple or something like that. I think there's many antiques that are still in good shape now that were, usually it's just the regional secondary wood. I grew up in North Carolina, a lot of them were made out of yellow pine.
Yeah, I've built a lot of cases, and I always use sycamore.
You guys, reminder, please use your microphones or raise your hand so we can hear.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay, I've built a lot of cases, and I always use sycamore for the slides and the drawer sides. Because if you take two pieces of sycamore and rub them back together,
slick.
They get slick.
That's
they
awesome.
also call it button wood because it was used for buttons.
That's awesome.
And
I appreciate that.
Yes, sycamore is amazingly tough.
That's good. That's a great tip. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Now, what I do, I typically will work in my secondary wood. Since I'm a period guy, I usually use pine, cypress, or poplar because that's what the traditional ones were made out of. But I will also wax everything, and the wax is not sophisticated as well. I get an old candle, rub the bottom and rub the top. That usually helps a lot. Now, these were working really good in my shop, but after sitting in my shop and my car today, they're all pretty tight. So you can come up and be critical after the meeting. So that's the interior structure. This is somewhat of a down and dirty way, but effective. Anybody have any questions about that? Anything else about the interior structure? You always need to know, you need to have a runner at the top and you need to have a runner at the bottom because you don't want them to come out and tip. So they have to have a slot. The drawers have to have a slot to slide in. Because you want so you want it to come out and not fall out of the slot. So you have to kind of have a method to do that. Everybody understand that? So the next thing that comes, what do you think comes next? Building the drawers, right? Question?
Do you ever use the center runner? And a groove in the sides of your drawers?
I think I have done that maybe once. I typically don't because it seems like extra work to me, and I'm more of a workman-like, get-it-done type of guy. I have seen them where they have the glides on the sides where they have kind of a dovetail setup. I don't think I've ever made one of those, but I think that's a very effective way. To me, it seems like more work. So also, when you have that side assembly, you have to figure out ways to get more meat on the side. The way I look at it, of course, you'd have to have a fatter side to groove this out, to put it in. So doing it this way allows a nice thin side, which makes it not so bulky. I think these sides are roughly 3/8, which are on the smaller side. A bigger piece might do a half, but I really wouldn't want it to be much bigger than that. They'd just get really heavy.
Way, wouldn't you have to make an overlay drawer front to hide that slide?
That would be one method to do it, yeah. And that's one thing we're going to talk about the drawer fronts. So part of the figuring out this is how are your drawers going to be, and you can make either inset or overlay. And if you look at the piece on the cover there, go back to the first page. That piece is all overlay drawers, which is pretty nice in a way because your fit doesn't really matter that much as long as it goes flush. The challenge for overlay drawers is then you have to do the dovetails inside that rabbet, if you will, which means extra work. But to me, it's an aesthetic choice more than anything else. if I were to choose just based on how hard is something to build, I would do inset drawers. Make sense? I mean, you could also do another way would be, a modern way would be make the drawer box and then attach up front, and that would be a pretty easy way to do it. And I would have no problem with that at all. Just not really a traditional way to do it. Does that make sense to everyone? So typically I use hand cut dovetails, and one thing you have to deal with is how do you treat the edges. So you could do a bead or you could do nothing. In this case, I chose to do what's called cock beading. I don't know if you all can see this on the camera. You have the overhead camera? No overhead. No overhead? So what I did here was essentially ran around here with a rabbiting bit. You do have it? Okay. I'm not sure if you can see that anyway. So I'll pass this drawer around. There's a small strip of wood that's created with a little bead that's proud, which makes a nice ring, a nice finish around the drawer. You can all see that, the bead. So this is flush with this, which actually takes quite a bit of work to get everything fitted. But I usually make those cock beads. Ron was up here earlier, and you can make these cock bead strips using a tiny little router bit and round over each way. I typically make them with a scratch stock because I like the subtleness of it looking like it was handmade. And they're kind of, it takes a lot of work to make these strips, but I think it really makes a piece that much nicer. I can pass this around if you want. As far as dovetailing, I think I've never done dovetails by machine in my life. I don't know that I ever want to. I'm a hand-cut dovetail guy, but I would also say that I'm not the world's cleanest woodworker. If you go to like Wayne, for example, his dovetails are going to be much more artistic and clean than mine. I would think my work is going to be more workmanlike, if you will. If that makes sense? I typically am not going to be super concerned about the needle point on the dovetails because it's a lot of work to get them really clean, you know? So I need enough room to at least run the saw through there, you know? And I typically cut my tails with a bandsaw, and then I chisel out the bases, and then I mark and saw the tails or the pins. So that's how I typically do it. The structure is almost always the same. You cut a groove in the front, cut a groove in the sides, and then you can push a chamfered board in the bottom, and that stays relatively loose, and it allows for the wood to move. It's not really loose, but it's loose enough to move. And that's not completed yet. I typically would put one screw in the bottom into the back of the drawer, and that would allow it to move. And then it also would allow you over time. Typically, they'll dry over time, and if it ever dried enough that it came out of the slot, you can take the screw out, push it in, and it's repairable. So, any questions about how I make drawers? Go ahead with the.
Now, these drawer fronts are solid wood with cock beading.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, 8 inches, if I move that cabinet to New Orleans, it's going to expand some.
Yeah.
No matter how good your AC is.
Yeah.
How much gap do you leave to keep
Well,
it from?
I try to leave a sloppy 30-second, if you will, and it's pretty tight. But if you keep it in the air conditioning, I mean, I grew up in North Carolina, so I mean, New Orleans is a hot, humid environment, so is North Carolina. I will say that these swelled on me today because they were in my truck all day, and they're tight. Now, they've settled a little bit. They're not as tight as they were when I came in. So they've settled a little bit. I also fitted these drawers nicely 2 years ago, and when I went back to this piece earlier this year, they were all really tight in my shop. So I had to go back, and I hadn't done the cock beating yet, so I had to go back and refit everything. It was too tight. So I guess it's a little bit of a roll the dice, but I think that the methods are pretty solid, and it's probably looser than maybe the piston fit that everyone wants. It's probably looser than that because I don't want to have to go back and. Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonably tight, but I mean these are probably about the margins that I go for. And I can't say that I actually have measured them. It's just sort of, I think there's a line there, so there's probably more on the side than I would like. And I actually think this might have moved a little bit, so I may have to see if that has popped open.
And I use type on 1 and 2, just whatever's on sale.
Yeah.
But somewhere I remember reading that you got about 3.5 inches where you can have cross grain.
Yeah.
And so your drawers are like 6 inches wide, so you're pushing the limits of
On the cock beating?
of the tight bond.
Yeah, the cock beating could fail over time. That's why I nail the sides. If you see they're nailed.
Yeah.
That way, obviously the tops and the bottoms don't need to be nailed because they're long grain to long grain. But
right.
This is a very traditional method. If you look at 18th century furniture, they were all done exactly like that. So, but you're right. That's definitely a cross grain scenario that a big drawer probably is at risk over time. Completely agree. Yes, sir.
Is the cock beating a regional period detail from where you grew up, or is it just something you like to do?
I think it's more universal. If you look at furniture from England or New England or South Carolina or Philadelphia, it's a more refined treatment, but I don't think it's that regional. So, what else is? So the next thing we have to do, we've got a box, we've got our structure, we've got our drawers. Any questions about the drawers anymore? The next thing go ahead. Oh, you need a microphone.
So I noticed the little blocks in there. Those are the drawer stops.
Yes. So there's a couple ways you can do stops. The one that I prefer is just little glued on pieces right here that I typically would install those just a hair to the front, and then when you put the drawer in, you can hand plane the front of this with a shoulder plane. It will like one swipe and you push it in, is it there? And another swipe and push it in. So these are all fitted so that the drawer can be there. And then once you get close, I typically put all the drawers in, lay the piece down and scrape this whole thing together to get a nice flat surface. And that's the method that I use to fit them where they're all in one plane. And it's not perfection, and that actually is a lot of work. That's kind of grunt work, but it also takes using a Stanley number 80 scraper. I love the Stanley number 80 scraper. It's one of my favorite tools, but I know from teaching it, it's not the easiest tool to just pick up. Anyone try a number? You know what I'm talking about. You know that you have to learn to get a feel for it because it can chatter. It can really tear up, especially when you're going across the grain. You kind of have to slurve it around a corner and you have to understand which way your grain is going because you can really tear things up. But that's my preferred method. If the drawer front is, in your glue up, if it's out more than a little bit, I'll hand plane it. But you have to be super careful, especially with wild grain, and it will tear it up pretty fast. So if you have your mouth really tight and you have taken a really fine shaving and you're skewing it, you just have to watch all those things, because if you're careless, you could really make a big mistake. But that's how I typically would flatten the fronts. So the next thing we do is add feet, and there's lots of different feet you can put on. You could turn feet, you could do carved feet, you can do kind of like bandy-legged feet, you could do ball and claw feet. But my favorite treatment on a chest, and this was meant to be simple, was just simple bracket feet. And I'm going to flip it up this way. Well, first I'll turn it around. You can't see the front ones, so the front ones are just miter, but you can see the back ones, so I will almost always dovetail the side to the back. The front ones, you can see if I turn up the bottom, are simply mitered, and I usually put a spline in there. I didn't check these, but is there a spline in there? Yes. So, and they're here. That was my test piece. It was no good, but it's on the bottom. So that's hopefully only one of them. So, and the spline, I just use whatever wood I have to cut a slot, and I typically would just turn the table saw at a 45 and run it across there either way, and then glue these up. And then you also have, again, you have wood movement issues on how to attach this. The grain is going this way, and this grain is going this way, so you have to deal with wood movement again. And the way I always learned it was to install this piece here, which is essentially glued. And I haven't changed those out to my nails yet. I typically will use drywall screws, and I'll take it out and put traditional nails in if I ever get around to it, because I'm the only one who's ever going to know that's under there. But glue and screw this, and then these will glue the first couple of inches, and then screw this in using a slotted connection down at the bottom. So there's a little bit of ability for this to move independent of this. That makes sense? And then this gives you a nice place to glue this foot to this frame board. I would say there's other methods to do it. Some people would mortise and tenon this. I've seen other in the Boston area, they might put a large dovetail in the bottom of the case and connect that. So there's different ways to do it, but this is a very traditional sort of workmanlike way to do it. You glue these on, and then you always back this up with blocking, because really these feet that you see are just molding, and what really supports the piece off the floor is this block. Again, you have another cross grain situation, because this board is cross grain to this. If this was a bigger piece, there's a way to do stacked pieces that are all flat grain, and you stack those in different orientations. That's a way to help with that. Since this is a smaller piece, I just said, don't think I care, and just put a chunk in there.
So when I worked for Stewart, we did that stacked on a great big piece.
Yeah.
And they were like 2 inches square, because it was a giant leg that was supporting these corners.
And you stack them and turn
And then,
that
alternated
way.
the grain
And
all
that
the way up.
That way there's only minimal amount of dimensions where they're cross grained to each other.
Right.
But
and we used hide glue on it, because Stewart said, hey, this thing's it'll be 75 years before this has failed, and I won't be around to worry about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Stewart is very much working on traditional pieces. Stuart Brown was a guy that he doesn't live in the town in town anymore, but an English woodworker, cabinet maker that restored antique furniture, and Greg worked with him for a while. Let's see, any other questions about the feet? I thought I had something else I want to talk about. We always chamfer this here, and that helps it because inevitably you're going to drag it around the floor. If you chamfer that, that helps that not drag. It helps it not dent your floors. If you drag it across a floor that's rough, you could put stress on this some way. So chamfer's a good method, no matter what the foot is.
How did you know what I was going to ask, if they were a smidge longer than the actual leg?
Yeah, they're roughly an eighth longer. So you can't really see it when you put it up there, but you just don't want since these are not that structural, you want your structure to be on the floor. You don't want these to be touching the floor.
I just want to know how you knew I was going to ask that. You got ESPN or something?
No, lucky guess. So this is just simply a design choice of a frame at the bottom. Got a question, Joe?
The feet make all the difference in the world in the style of cabinet you're making.
Yes.
How do you determine, like if you're just going to make a cabinet, how do you determine what kind of feet you put on?
Yeah, I would say it's purely a design choice. Like I said, I typically don't care for ball and claw feet or cabriole legs on a case piece. I typically think that the bracket feet look a lot better because it just looks stronger. I kind of think those feet don't look like they were meant to be there. I think that the bracket feet give a nice feeling of sturdiness. I've done a lot of pieces that are called OG bracket feet. If you go to either one of those pieces on either the last piece or the first piece, Chris, on the PDF, first page or last page, either one. Those are called OG bracket feet, so they have a curve, but they're built exactly like this, except that they're made with some shape to them. They're built exactly like it. They're just also a lot harder to do. The straight ones are pretty easy, and when I went to design this, I just wanted it to be simple. And sometimes you can get pretty elaborate with your shapes here. You can have a little fun and make some shapes there, but that's just a design choice. Same thing here. I've held this a little bit out proud because I like the way it looked, and I'm just going to put a little cove molding. You see, I haven't gotten to that yet, but I have cut the molding, which is the biggest part. Fabricating the molding is the hardest part of it. Man, this is all moved like crazy since I had it in my shop. I should have glued it and nailed it the other day, but I was tired. Plus, I'm restricted to 1 to 2 pounds from my surgeon, so for my shoulders yet. But that's the feet. The last thing before we get to the other designs is the top. There's, like we said before, there's lots of ways to attach the top. The one I typically go for. Now, in our movement situation, we're actually not in bad shape because the sides are moving this way, the top is moving this way. If you were to somehow change your board to this, then you would have a cross grain situation, which would not be what you would want. But typically, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Even at the same time, since these are the widest boards in the piece, I typically do allow for a little bit of movement because the last thing you want is a crack in your top. So if you look here, these are just screwed on. You see the holes there, and I mean, you could say those are slotted, but I just took the drill and wallowed out the hole so if it does move a little bit, it'll be tight at the front and it'll move in the back. So that's sort of the method. And if you could see from this side, you can see I just countersunk there, you know, pocket, like a modern day pocket screw jig, but just countersunk so that the drawer can't slide. So you need those screw heads to be countersunk. And I was also given a hard time earlier because Ron asked me if there's a Phillips, and of course they're not. They're flat head screws, and before I finish, I'll dip these in acid because I don't like the bright shininess. So that'll be on the list to do soon. Let's see, that's pretty much the fundamentals of a top of a piece. One of the hardest things about this is just coming up with the right, what you want to do from a molding standpoint. And sometimes this can get kind of difficult. You could go like have a shaper bit made or a custom router bit, or you could take a stock router bit, which typically I don't do because I don't necessarily always want it to look like that. Or you could just go straight edged, and that would have been perfectly fine. You could do a complete round over, which would be easy to do with a router table. You could do some type of OG. So what I chose here, I wanted a round over, but I wanted a rabbet on the top for the shadow line. So I took a 3/8 inch or 3/8 radius round over bit, ran it here by hand, ran it underneath by hand, flipped it over, ran it by hand. I could have done it on a router table, but that would have taken a lot of setup in my shop, so I just did it all by handheld router. And then I took this on the table saw and cut another kerf across there, and then I used hand tools to smooth this out. So that's how I came up with that. So typically when you come up with some molding, especially something that doesn't match a router bit, you just have to have some sort of strategy to get there. And that's what I did here, and that was my project on Saturday. And like I said, that split on the top was not there when I did this, so that has to be dealt with. Any questions about that?
Hold it up to your mouth. How are you going to attach the top to the case?
It's screwed in. That's what this just goes 4 screw holes. You can see the holes right there. So just by 4 screws right through the structure here. So
I see little clips that they make specifically for that. What do you think of those?
yeah, I think those are great. So a lot of times you would use those in like a tables type scenario, and a table has more wood movement problems than this. This one has all the grain is going this way. In a table you have 4 aprons, so 2 sides are naturally going to be cross grain situation. So those buttons, those make sense. In a table especially, I would do it similar to this, but I would make sure that I had plenty of slot in my wallered out hole, if you will. That's a wallered out hole, that's a technical term. But I would definitely allow for movement in a table because of the cross grain situation on your sides.
Okay.
So, makes sense. And the last, this basically covers it all. You could always make more ornaments. You could always make them simpler. You could make them straighter. You could do less moldings. You could do everything straight. You could add carving. You could add blind fretwork. You could chamfer the corners. There's all different ways to ornament these. In fact, looking at the last page in the PowerPoint, the picture is not that. I don't know if you can blow that up at all. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. But that has blind fretwork around the top. It has chamfered fluted columns, and so that one was a lot more elaborately ornamented. So don't worry about it.
2 things, Cal.
Yes.
How long do you make the drawers? Because I've seen so many chest of drawers, antique and modern furniture, they don't always go to the back of the carcass, of the cabinet. Why do they do that? And then on your top, how much time do you spend to match the boards with the look, the grain match? Yeah.
As far as the top matching the sides on the grain matching, you know, I do my best to pick the boards that I like, and then I roll with it. Here I had sides that matched on these, and I didn't have any matching boards on the top, so I was just punting through what I had at home. It helps to have everything out of one tree. That'd be a good way to make it all match. As far as the boards, the drawers not going all the way to the back, part of that could be for wood movement, because sometimes you might have one way to stop. You know how I showed you the stops that I like? One way to do stops is to let the drawer hit the back of the case, which I don't care for, because if that expands, then your drawer comes out. And I also don't like that potentially slamming against the back. But I wouldn't, if we put stops back there, that would be one method. But I like it up at the front. That way it always stops at the front, and it can freely move in the back. So I don't know how much I did here, but I would typically leave it a 1/2 inch short or 3/4 short. That's just allows for a little movement. That's probably, we can put the drawers back in there and see how much I did allow, but that's probably what I do. The last things are just, you know, hardware. You can do whatever you want. You can make your own hardware out of wood. You can buy some really beautiful reproduction hardware, which I will do. And you can make a lot of different design choices in your hardware. So back to your same question, Joe, how do you decide what hardware you want? You know, just as a design choice. And finishing, I'm partial to shellac, so I'll probably finish it with shellac. Hopefully, when next meeting or two, I can bring to show and tell one of these finished. I made a pair of these, so hopefully in the next meeting or two, I can bring one of these to show and tell. So, yes, good. Microphone.
Do you ever put a stop in to keep the drawers from coming all the way out when they're being used?
I've never done that on a drawer. I've done that with loapers. Do you know what loapers are? The ones you pull out for a desktop. You know, for like a fall front desk. You pull those out, and I've made stops for that. It's actually kind of fun to do those, because you can make them. You can do cool little hickory spring joints. You pop them in, and then they won't come out until you go in and press them. So I've never done that. I think that would be, if you had a kid that always pulled them out, I think I would do that, but I've never done that. So, any other questions? I probably talked a lot longer than I intended to, so I appreciate your patience.
So who is this cabinet going to be for?
This is, I was making this for our guest bedroom, because I have some cruddy hand-me-down nightstands in our guest bedroom, but then the nightstands that I have in my wife in my bedroom now are more tables with one drawer, and she's like, these are much more practical. These are going to go in our bedroom.
Cool. So you're making two?
Yeah, so I'm making a pair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Which one's your wife getting?
Whichever one she wants.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Yeah. They're both the same.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Here, Robert.
I guess everybody but me understands how those splines were made.
So I could draw it probably better than I could explain it, but you have a mitered foot. So that miter has an edge. So typically, I will take that, and if you take that mitered edge, you turn your table saw to 45 degrees, run that against the fence, and that makes a nice 90-degree cut in that miter edge, and then you can fill that spline and glue them together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Don't you want to make sure the spline is same grain direction as the...
That's correct. I'll repeat that. I'll make the spline, you want the spline to be the same direction, because actually if you put it long grain, it's going to split anyway. So you need to make your splines out of cross grain material so that you're cinching them up and the grain sort of goes around. And it also, the spline would not be strong if it was long grain. It would split. So yes, good point.
And the other thing for newbies or whatever is when you're doing that nice edge on the top, do the end grain first and then the...
That is true. You want to do the end grain first, because if you have any blowout, then you can come back and slick it up with the long grain. So, and that's kind of a universal woodworking. If you're ever finishing a bunch of edges, do your end grains first, do your ends first, and then finish with the long grain. So easier to get slicked up. So.
Do you typically block the ends when you're doing the edge?
Repeat that one, please.
Like put a block there to protect it from blowout. That's a smart thing, but that requires more setup. So I usually just trust that I can get it done, and then, or I flip it and come and work from the outsides to in. If I feel like it's in danger, I'll flip it and work from the other direction.
Well, Cal, I've done that kind of, I'm over here to your left. I've made my top longer and then
rip it off.
And then rip off
Yeah.
the tear out.
That's effective as well. That's a great method.
What can go wrong?
Yeah. So like I said, everyone, to summarize, this is a nice accessible chest. So, you know, if you all are interested, I would be interested in teaching another class like this, like we did a couple of years ago. We also had a really nice spice box class about 2018, so that's 6 years ago now, which was a wonderful class. But it's a lot of work in a spice box because you have a lot of drawers. I mean, I made all the parts for all those. I mean, I made hundreds and hundreds of parts for the class because we had like 10 or 12 students.
Isn't that a candidate for string and berry too?
Yes, absolutely. So line and berry would look great on this piece. It would look great on a spice chest, and you made a lot of those spice chests with line and berry. Ron Lomax did a beautiful line and berry chest quite a few years ago. I think he might have taken off, but
It got dark. He doesn't drive after dark.
But I think that's it, unless there's any other questions or comments. I appreciate you all. Appreciate all the questions that helped us kind of move it along. So, but to summarize, all easy steps, just kind of need to do them in order and keep it going. You have to have a little bit of a grinder type mindset to build a chest of drawers because you can't do it in an afternoon. I see why people are turners, because you can do it in an afternoon.
Turning, woodworking for those with a short attention span.
Yeah, that's right. But that's why I'm a furniture maker. Sometimes my pieces take 18 months or, 2 years by the time you get around to them. But, I would hope that start to finish, I could make this easily in one work week if I ever had such a thing that I could woodwork for a week. I could easily do it. I could probably easily do it in 30 hours maybe. I'm just guesstimating, but that would be moving pretty fast. Okay.
Any other questions for Cal? I get to do something that's a lot of fun. It's time for the mugshot.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are you getting this, Chris? Who's getting this?
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Where are we looking?
At the camera.
At the camera. Here we are.
Awesome.
Good.
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, everybody.
A special thank you to our guest today, to the Guild's Leadership Committee, and to all of our sponsors. For more information about the Guild, upcoming classes, and events, please visit our website kcwg.org. You can also find us on social media by searching for Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. And remember to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.